And we're joined by Sharon Shepherd, who was a community creator, certainly in your stint as mayor for 6 years, starting in 2005.
Correct.
When you look back at those years, what sort of stands out for you?
Well, I guess really my politics started long before that because I was city councillor for 3 terms. So, you know, I started in '96 and then was elected mayor, and but I'd been a community advocate before that. I always ran on a platform that I was from the community. I had belonged to neighborhood associations and strongly believed that that's how you have change happen. And so that was kind of where I stood with things. And socially minded, I was on helping at the school with a PAC president stuff, that kind of involvement, involved in sports in the community with our children at the time. So just when I became mayor, it was like, you know, just carry on and make this the community. We'd been living here since '77, so just continue to make it a better community. Loved it. So
the only female mayor in Kelowna's history.
And you know, I never thought about that. Like when I ran, it was interesting. It was my daughter that had said to me, I'd been on council for 3 terms, debated whether I should stay another term because there is no requirement that you have to stop. I knew that I'd proudly been 3rd, 2nd, and 1st when I ran for council. And so thought, oh, that's sort of a tough thing to keep, you know, that up. And do I want to stay there forever? Is that a good thing to do? Does the community need change? And it's my daughter that said, you know, you can always retire.
Right.
And so I thought, right, I mean, if I didn't run for council and I decide to run for mayor and don't get elected, then I end up changing what I do. So that was sort of where I thought, okay, I can run for mayor. Nothing to do with being female or whatever, just I'd been on council and thought that I maybe could bring a different influence to the city and the planning for the city. And so,
but you must see that it shows young women that, you know, you can get the top job.
And I still, to this day, still have young women, now they're older, of course, but women that knew me during that time, and they come up and say, you know what, you were a big influence. Not, again, anything that you realize. You know, I had lots of young children, grade 3, they take social studies, and they used to come to my office lots, and girls and boys, and they used to see me on the street all the time and yell, "Hi, Sharon, how are you?" And the parents would be aghast because, you know, their kids are talking to the mayor that way.
Right.
But
You're supposed to be your worship.
Well, often the mayor wasn't even known by the parents, but the grade 3ers in this community knew me. And then I did one thing I was very proud of, I had a student council started, and so involved grade 8 to 12 students. And they could pick what they wanted to get accomplished, and they'd work towards having a council meeting where they'd make a decision. And so I still have some of those young students now. They're lawyers. In some cases, they're working for federal government. They contact me and say, you know, we loved what we did with you. So that was kind of a social aspect.
Right.
I mean, we did big things. We had H2O happen during my time, and that was I remember Councillor Hodge at the time being there to celebrate that we were opening it, and he had not been part of the choosing of the H2O. It had been my first council when I was mayor, and we went through a lot of dialogue, a lot of stress about whether we should go forward with a 50-meter pool, etc. And Councillor Hodge said, you know, like, we get to have our name up on the plaque even though we really didn't make the decision. But the H2O was a very big one. And every time I go there, it's my grandchildren now, they say, Nana, your name's up on the plaque, and they're very proud of that, you know. So H2O was a big one. Stewart Park, we celebrated, you know, and then the Big Bear was unveiled.
It was during your tenure that the new bridge went in?
We got to walk across. We were the first to walk across the bridge. I still have memories of that. That happened, the airport expansion, the university taking place, the whole discussion about UBC and the college was a big part of certainly my career. And it's hard to differentiate between when I was mayor and when I was council, because I felt during council times, the 9 years, that we did a lot of hard work as well. And then the 6 years as mayor, it was different people and different things happen in your community, and homelessness became a big issue.
Right. The airport was, I guess it just keeps expanding,
It does.
but there was some important developments that took place there during your tenure as well.
We were talking about expansion, purchase of property at the, I guess it would be the west end of the airport. Yes, just what you need to do to plan for an airport is huge, but it was always self-sustaining too, with the airport tax that people pay. It just brought in enough money so that we could keep expanding. And
so how would you describe that? It almost sounds sexist to describe it in these terms, but your approach to running meetings, etc., relatively soft-spoken and consultative, not one to pound the desk that you mentioned, right? Is that a good way to?
Well, that was
run
my
it?
way, and it was always the theory that you have to be, shouting and hollering and to make your point across was never the way I did things. And I was involved in many, many committees and leadership roles throughout my career prior to even being on council and since. So it's just I'm a hard worker, and I believe in involving those that are at the table in making sure that everyone gets their fair share, as well as I'm a big believer in the community, in the sense that the community, it's their community. I'm there to represent them, whether they've elected me, to be there or not, voted for me. I still try to understand their points of view as best I could, and that was my way.
I've heard people, say as a criticism that you would always strike a committee too often, rather than make a decision. But if there's the opportunity and the time to do that, you get more consensus.
Well, true, and it wasn't that we always just struck a committee. I mean, we had a lot of things happening, and it's always helpful, I think, to have a realization of what people really do believe in and think are important. A committee that happened and has not been has not occurred since my tenure was for people with disabilities. And that was probably one that I always had this belief that our community, if we could make it accessible to people with disabilities, it would be accessible to everyone. And there's, an example of a mom trying to get on a bus with a child in a carriage. I mean, there's just as much difficulty at a bus stop, to access a bus. So we had amazing input and influence from that group of individuals, and they were individuals in the community that, from people that were blind, people that were in wheelchairs, people that had just difficulty maneuvering, with a walker, etc.
Right.
So, that was a committee that didn't continue, and there was a women's committee, in fact. And in fact, I think Councillor Hodge was the only male. I put a male on it because we were trying not to be. And he talked a lot about that committee, but the women's committee was about trying to plan a city for women, thinking mostly about safety issues. And we had some very good reports that came out of that.
Sometimes work gets done and then later gets forgotten, and a new council has to reinvent the wheel. And you brought up homelessness. Back when you were leading council, there was work done there on coming up with plans.
Oh, absolutely, and actually it was the regional district. We had a staff member dedicated, identified priorities, worked through making sure, we believed that homelessness wasn't just a city thing, that it was going to impact the other communities in our region. So we advocated to have this committee and a staff member dedicated to deal with homelessness. A report was done, and so then recently when the new report was being advocated for, I said, dust off the old one. I'm sure that there's a lot of information that was done that you could bring back, find out what worked, what didn't work. And when Bill McKinnon was asked by the city to work on it, he actually did call me and say, a lot of the work was there.
There it was.
So, but that's things change and people change, and it's just too bad that when there is investment in whatever study is being done, that it gets put on a shelf somewhere. I can tell you
Yes.
about one at Orchard Park, for example. There was a plan, and I always loved the plan. I think a 3-day workshop brought in people from all over to do this vision of what Orchard Park area should look like.
Right.
Because it was a town center,
Yes.
but very little residential happening there.
Yeah.
And I remember a dialogue around how do you get people safely from Mission Creek, trails to Mill Creek. And now, like, there are big connections in our community, linear corridors. We talked about a bridge over the highway. And so I had this vision of I called it the MDM, the Mission Creek to Mill Creek vision. And this bridge that would be green, just like both the corridors were. Can you imagine how beautiful that would have been?
Yeah.
And that study never surfaced. Like, after all that work, it got put on a shelf somewhere.
Yeah.
And things, priorities went elsewhere.
We've gone to 4-year terms now. Maybe there's more chance to get to things rather
Well, I
than...
don't know. I think once the study's been done, I mean, there's a big study done at the KSS site too that had a very different vision than what's happened on that
Yeah.
site. So,
all in all, do you like when you look around at the city? Do you
there
like...
are what I do not like as much is the lack of greenery, especially on the denser, higher developed buildings. I think that the setbacks, the density is not livable space is happening.
So set it back a little further, make room for some green space
and
between...
having gardens for people to be able to do some actual work in the soil if they want to. They took out all the trees on the highway. I wrote a letter about that too. I don't understand. We've got had a beautiful entrance. I thought it was hard to make a beautiful entrance into our city. The Bridgeway is one, but coming in from the Airport Way, it's just a very hard, not very welcoming.
Yeah.
Took out all the trees. I mean, there was irrigation that went to the medians, and they could have planned to put at least some kind of greenery along there. So
you would be saying, come on, don't take away greenery and put more in where we're developing.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I know that Kelowna used to win the Communities in Bloom every year.
That's disappeared. I haven't heard that even exists
We were
anymore.
a champion of green.
We were a champion of sustainable development and new, like zero-scaping. Like zero-scaping, when I first started on council, I think was gravel. You put gravel in your front yard.
You don't need to water gravel, apparently.
No, so the word zero-scape was new, I think, to people. And we did a beautiful job, and we could have made our city entirely known for having planting around zero-scaping. And there is some areas of the city in front of H2O, the H2O garden, or the un-H2O, it's called, the garden, and that's all zero-scaping for people. And so that was kind of a really neat initiative too.
So you look around and you see things you like and things that concern you?
Traffic drives me crazy.
People just love Kelowna and they want to move here, so it can't stay.
And that's fair. I believe that we have a university. Why would people not want to bring their families here? The university, the college, healthcare. I mean, we've got a healthcare facility here, cardiology that's second to none, and of course the airport that people can come and leave if they have to, and connections to the coast is very simple. So we do have a place that people are going to come, and I've never felt that we would ever be able to shut the doors, or that we should even consider something like that.
But you must look around and see, developments that came before your council at the time, and there they are now. It must be really interesting to see those little parts of the city that you played a hand in guiding.
Oh, there's no question. You see roads that happen, and roads that were planned, and roads that are still being planned. Like this one, like the Birch connection. Yeah. I don't know why that hasn't been completed.
And you probably recall some of the backstories about how someone wanted it to be a different way.
Exactly. There's lots of stories that probably don't get told necessarily.
Yeah, well, maybe we'll bring you back and hear some of those. But thank you for your commitment to public service and joining us today to tell us about your time as Mayor of Kelowna. And thank you for watching Kelowna Now.